Robert Kirkman is very well known for being behind two very powerful IPs. The first is, of course, The Walking Dead, and the second is Invincible. He's also written many comics for Marvel, and he was one of the main people who wrote for Marvel Zombies. But one of the earliest of his creations was not The Walking Dead, it wasn't Invincible, it wasn't Marvel Zombies, it was a quaint little indie comic called Battle Pope. Now, Battle Pope might be single-handedly the most wackiest, weirdest crap I think I've ever read. It's not great. I think it's pretty abhorrent, to be honest. But it is kind of funny at the same time. So, today we're going to be talking about Battle Pope and everything that comes along with it. So, to give you a little background on Battle Pope, it was first conceived of in the year 2000, and it was published under a small press company called Funkotron. Now, this was owned by both Robert Kirkman and Tony Moore. You might know Tony Moore as the guy who did most of the art for the original Walking Dead comics until he was replaced by Charlie Adler. Eventually, though, it was re-released by Image Comics. There are only 14 issues of Battle Pope, consisting of 4 volumes, as the comic was quite abruptly just cancelled by Kirkman in 2007 with the 14th issue, and the ending does not seem like an ending, and Kirkman admits as much in the back half of the issue. The reason it was cancelled really just comes down to sales. They weren't selling very many, and obviously Kirkman wanted to support other artists at Image Comic, plus he was working on both Invincible and The Walking Dead and some Marvel projects, so ultimately Battle Pope just could not take any more of his time, so he cancelled Battle Pope in light of working on Invincible and The Walking Dead. So what is Battle Pope about? What is this story? The main character is, of course, you'll never guess it, the Pope, and his name is Oswald, but he's a particularly terrible Pope. We basically learn as soon as he was made Pope, he started having sex with many women. He's very much into his drinking and stuff as well, and he's all round a really rude, misogynistic, bitter man. And then one day, God came to earth, and he basically did the rapture. So all the sinners were left behind, and all the holy people went to heaven. And of course, the Pope was one of the many people to be condemned. After that, all hell broke loose. Literally. As the gates of hell broke open and a bunch of demons came to earth. One of these, of course, it was Lucifer himself. There was a big battle between all of humanity and demonkind, and it was decided that most of the demons would go back to hell, but some of the demons would stay, and humans and demonkind would sort of live together, and there was like a peace treaty drawn. So that's the world that the Pope now lives in. So we start the story, he's just drinking, as he always does, and this demon called Balaam is attacking a woman, and the Pope comes to her defense. He gets his ass kicked, but he's able to chop off Balaam's arm, and he also makes fun of Balaam's very small penis. The woman, and this becomes a constant reoccurring theme, and it does feel utterly misogynistic, the woman instantly falls into the Pope's arms and wants to have sex with him. The Pope and the woman are in the Pope's apartment when Balaam comes back for revenge, and in the fight, the woman is killed and the Pope is mortally wounded before Jesus Christ himself comes to shoot Balaam, and God is also there too. And God basically sets a task for the Pope. He needs to save Saint Michael, who's currently being held captive by Lucifer. And he basically awards the Pope with a ripped-ass body to be able to go do this. Why God doesn't just go himself, I don't know, but there you have it. We also briefly check in with Lucifer, who is posed as the main villain of this series. Spoiler, he isn't for long, where he has Saint Michael all captive, and Michael's cursing him, saying that, God will save me, there'll be a rescue party, and we get like a little Kirkmanism, I guess, here, because Lucifer reveals one of his henchmen, or 2 of his henchmen, in fact, are the zombie twins. Very cool design. I like the look at them. I wonder what they're up to. I forgot to mention as well, when God and Jesus save the Pope, God basically dumps Jesus with the Pope. He basically says Jesus has to be with him and help him out. So the Pope is stuck with Jesus, who is an absolute buffoon in this series. Jesus is the most stupid character ever. He's very dumb. He's very naive. He's very much childlike. So don't be mad at me. That's how the comics depicted him, okay? So Pope and Jesus are going around the city trying to look for St. Michael, of course, trying to find where he is, and the zombie twins ambush them both. It's a pretty cool fight, but basically the Pope seemingly defeats them before they unite together as one sort of being, this weird looking thing. Pope laughs it off at first, but it's revealed they have this special power, I guess, where they can rise all the dead. And so a bunch of bodies just rise out of these graves, and the zombies form together to give them this massive, like, giant-like body. It's just this huge giant made of dead bodies. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of a cool concept. I do like it. The big giant zombie twin is defeated when they eat Jesus, and Jesus' halo, I think, blows them up. Whatever. Jesus and Pope then fight their way to Hellcorp to, of course, go and save St. Michael, but they're met with many demons that they must defeat first. Lucifer also has these henchmen, both Eamon, who's like a little technician guy, and Brenda, who's this sexualized demon lady. We'll just call her that. So just keep note of both of them because they will become relevant later. So the Pope and Jesus fight their way through the hordes of demons, but eventually Jesus is crucified and the Pope is defeated. They both are then brought to Lucifer, who sort of mocks the Pope at first, but then the Pope spits his cigar in Lucifer's eye, and Lucifer beats the shit out of the Pope some more. In this moment as well, the Pope does briefly flirt with Brenda. This will become relevant later on, but on top of this again is just a consistent thing where every female character the Pope interacts with, he sleeps with. I shit you not. This is a consistent thing that happens. So Lucifer is trying to extract St. Michael's halo to combine it to his horns to give him ultimate godlike power. That is essentially his mission. And Eamon, who's his little technician demon, he's been working on this device to be able to do that. But basically, if Michael dies, the halo will lose its power, so he has to remove the halo and keep Michael alive at the same time, and that's what this machine is trying to do. There's a little battle, and Pope is almost able to stop Lucifer from putting the halo on his head, but he is unfortunately able to do so. Now, with this new power, he sends the Pope to hell. So the Pope in the next issue is in hell. He meets this female demon, and you never guess it, he sleeps with her. It's also implied this demon is underage as well. I don't know what Kirkman was going for here. I don't know. The Pope survives in hell for a little bit. He ends up meeting this guy called Sam, who is consistently having his body being eaten by a demon. And I guess his body like reforms, and the demon then comes back and eats more. It's pretty sick. But then this guy reveals that he also is fond of going to the grape pits, we'll call them, to have go at some of the whores that are there. That's how it's depicted in the comic, okay? So we'll say that. So this Sam guy, don't feel bad for him. He's a piece of shit. So to cut a long story short, the Pope breaks out of hell by defeating the guard at the gates, and he escapes back into the city. He confronts God about going to hell, and God gifts him a halo. He then defeats Lucifer, but Lucifer blows up anyway because of the power. The power of St. Michael's halo was too much for Lucifer to handle. So he's gone, and God basically is willing to fulfill his promise to the Pope and allow him to go to heaven, but the Pope declines the offer. He still wants to go to heaven eventually, but for now he wants to become the guardian of the city with Jesus as his sidekick. So that's basically the main premise of the entire comic. These few issues basically have set up the story, and so he leaps off the building with Jesus with his new catchphrase, which is "duty calls." We get this really weird comic strip where God is checking out St. Michael's ass, and then St. Michael gets really homophobic. Weird. Anyway, the Pope goes to clean up the dead body. Remember the girl that he hooked up with in the first issue? Yeah, her dead body is still in his apartment, so he goes to clean that up, and we meet Agnes, who is his landlady, and she's not a nice lady. She's very mean. They bring the body to the graveyard, but the body then turns into this demon-esque thing and attacks the Pope, trying to kill him. Jesus is able to shoot her and they rebury the body, but the Pope doesn't remember her name, so just leaves "Rip Easy Chick" on her grave. It's not great, guys. It's not great. So it turns out Lucifer didn't die. He in fact was just sent back to hell, and there's this demon called Mephistopheles who has Lucifer captured and is seemingly taunting him about his failed mission. Now, this plot point goes nowhere, so I'm not going to bother mentioning it again. Lucifer doesn't become a threat again, and neither does this Mephistopheles guy either. There's some wacky antics with Jesus and Pope, but we also meet Mark, who is the Pope's neighbour, who essentially turns into a demon whenever he's angered. There's this weird subplot where the Pope goes to help this man's wife who's demon-possessed, and he ends up having sex with her to cure her, and then he himself gets the same demon possession. But then they sort of just drop this plot point. Very weird. Meanwhile, Brenda, Balaam, Eamon, and the zombie twins have been bringing their forces together to try and take back Hellcorp after some bureaucrats have essentially taken it over, following Lucifer's death, or Lucifer being sent back to hell at least. The Pope gets mad at Jesus because Jesus is interacting with all of the Pope's sexual interactions and turning off all the women because Jesus does some action that, sends them packing, running home, and the Pope's very angry about this. Brenda and her friends are able to take back Hellcorp, and they then decide to take the Pope out once and for all. They absolutely decimate his apartment building, but the Pope is able to defeat both the zombie tweens, Balaam, and the rest of them, and they flee, leaving the Pope and the people who occupy his building now homeless. Of course, this includes Mark, Mark's girlfriend, Agnes, Jesus, the Pope himself, and Todd. Who's Todd? He's just some random fucking guy. The Pope then destroys Hellcorp, he turns it into rubble, and him and Brenda fight it out. But it ends in them kissing, and then she flees. It's kind of weird. The Pope and friends then get a new home, which is this large church, run by a guy called Chris, who is Jesus' biggest fan. He's like the last Christian guy living in this world. The Pope walks in on Agnes having a shower, and you'll never guess it, he has sex with Agnes. Yes, he has sex with this old lady. It's insane. We then get some Pope backstory. We find out that the Pope was once almost assassinated, and after being shot, he ran after the guy who shot him and seemingly beat him to death. We also learned that the Pope was trained by Bruce Lee. Yes, Bruce Lee trained the Pope. I shit you not, this is in the comic. Now, ever since kissing Brenda, the Pope has been obsessed, okay? He's been having dreams of her, having a future with her, having a child with her. He's obsessed with her, and he really wants to meet her again and, of course, have sex with her. So he finds Balaam, and he asks, "Where is Brenda?" The Pope is awarded the key to the city, he stops a bank robbery, and then he finally tracks down Brenda, and the two of course have sex. But he's quite underwhelmed by her performance, by the encounter in general, and so he leaves her really pissed off. Randomly then, the Pope just has this dream where the comic is now in black and white, and I can only imagine that the reason why this is inserted here is because they didn't have time to colour the rest of the issue. So they just inserted this here as a way to fill pages. That's what it feels like. It generally feels that way. And considering it gets cancelled in a few issues anyway, I think this is probably quite clear why this is randomly here. The next issue starts with Santa Claus. Yes, I shit you not. Santa Claus. Okay, and we find out that Santa Claus had a similar backstory to the Pope in a way. He was also condemned to stay on Earth, but after that condemnation happened, no one had any reason to give each other presents, of course. There is no such thing as naughty and nice list because everyone's naughty. Everyone was condemned by God himself. So Santa lost his workshop, his wife left him, and he's left all bitter and depressed. Anyway, it's Jesus' birthday. Obviously, because it's Christmas, this is like a Christmas issue. And Jesus' mother, the Virgin Mary, appears to say hello to him. And you'll never guess it, the Pope has sex with her. I shit you not. Yes, this keeps happening. Every female character the Pope at least attempts to try and sleep with. Why? Santa then attacks Jesus, blaming him for his workshop closing and his wife leaving him because, of course, he is the Son of God. They fight it out, but eventually Santa comes to realize it's not all his fault, and they throw a big party for Jesus. Great. Now Santa has basically joined the team as well, okay? He's now a part of the Pope's little friendship group. Brenda is also really sad that the Pope doesn't think she's very sexy or didn't find her very fulfilling, and so she has sex with the zombie twins. Yes, I know. Eamon then discovers that Brenda had sex with the Pope, and he's really pissed off because he's in love with Brenda, so he attacks the Pope, but mid-battle, God then confronts the Pope for having sex with the Virgin Mary, because that's his woman, of course. We get a flashback to see that the Pope was always like this. He was always a depraved, sex-obsessed individual. And Santa just gives a talk down to Eamon, telling him that he's an absolute idiot because he hasn't even told Brenda how he truly feels. So how was the Pope meant to know? What an idiot. And so Eamon is defeated by words. Anyway, the Pope beats up God. They have a fight. Or I guess the Pope gets beaten up by God because God is kicking his ass. Yes. That is actually happening. What the hell's going on? Mary then stops the fight. She tells God that she wants commitment if she's to be tied down to him, and she didn't get the impression that they were meant to be exclusive to each other, and God decides to propose to her in response. The final issue is then the wedding of God and Mary. We watch the two of them get married in the church, with all of the Pope's friends being there, of course. And in the final panel, Mary jokes that her and the Pope can have one quick quickie, and the Pope agrees to it, and then she's like, yo, I was joking. And that's it. That's all of Battle Pope. Summed up, pretty much. So, what are my thoughts on Battle Pope as a comic book series? I think it's wild. I think it's pretty insane. I do think it's somewhat poorly written at times, and even Kirkman himself admits in the final issue that there was not much plot going on. The plot was just going from, set piece to set piece. I think the character of Oswald, the Pope, he's, how do I put this? Very misogynistic. And I don't think he's ever really chastised for this behaviour. So it does kind of make it feel like this behaviour is acceptable. And I think the comic is kind of problematic for that reason. Some of the jokes definitely do land, and I think some of it is pretty funny. I can't lie. But a lot of the jokes do feel very surface level. Like all the Jesus being stupid jokes, all the stuff where Jesus is just an absolute moron. To me, they're just not that clever. It's just, it's not funny at all. I don't really care. I'm not huge on the roster of villains either. I think Lucifer could have been like an interesting villain, although I was kind of glad he wasn't the only villain. But then the others just didn't feel that intimidating. Like, I do like the zombie twins, but then they're sort of made fun of as well for being pretty ridiculous. Balaam is just a joke, and then Brenda is immediately sexualized, and I feel like she has no character now other than just being sexy demon lady who gets a bit bossy sometimes. My favourite character is Todd. He's the least inoffensive character, so he gets a thumbs up. And that's it, really. Those are my thoughts on Battle Pope. Would I recommend it? I'd recommend it just for how ridiculous it is, personally. But it's not a great story. So don't be looking for something groundbreaking or the next Invincible or the next Walking Dead. Because Battle Pope is not that. I'll tell you that for now. But let me know your thoughts on this comic book series, and also let me know what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future. Would you like to see some non-Walking Dead videos, or are you happy with this just being a one-off? It's probably just going to be a one-off for now, but I thought it'd be pretty good just to look at it. Thought it'd be pretty interesting. So there you go. Also, this video was really badly timed. I swear to God, I didn't know that the Pope was going to die. The actual Pope was going to die. Ripperoo the Pope, though.